watching this video. I'm here with David, and I'm going to ask him another difficult question relating to our Centre Forward project. And today's question is a little bit of a scenario, David. So I want you to imagine somebody who wants to give money to the project, but they're concerned in case they need that money in the future. They want to give, but what if they need that money in the future? How would you respond to that scenario?
Well, I think that's a really lovely, honest question. I think it's a beautiful question in that sense, because it's the sort of question we all have, but maybe are too embarrassed to ask. And probably what I'll do is I'll take them to one of my very favourite verses in the Bible. In fact, it's many Christians up there in their top 10 favourite verses. It's Hebrews 13, verse 5. And it's a promise of God. God has said, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." The thing is, what's interesting about this verse is why the writer uses it. I think I would have imagined that it was because the church was being persecuted, or there was an illness in the church, or maybe there were some job difficulties or something like that. But actually, the first part of that verse is very different. It says this: "Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.'" And that really struck me, that he uses this verse to counteract their love of money. And here, love of money isn't like some sort of rich person counting their coins with a fantastic smile on their face. No, it's something much more practical. It's the love of money here is when we look to money as our security for the future rather than God. And we look to the promises of money rather than the promise of God. And the problem with that is we'll never have enough money. That's why we won't be content with what we have, because we'll always be able to imagine some worse outcome that we don't yet have enough money for. And so we need to save more and more money. So the writer says, no, you don't want to fall into that love of money. Instead, put your trust in the Lord's promises. So does that mean, though, we shouldn't ever set aside money? Well, no, I think it is all right to set aside money for things we know we're going to need in the future. Like our car's about to break down, we might set aside money to buy a new second-hand or third-hand car. And that's a reasonable thing to do. Or for many of us, we'll live way beyond our retirement age, our working life. And so we do need to set aside money so that we can live modestly until we wait to go to glory. But there is a difference between that and what we might call a love of money that is shown in hoarding. And let me give you two quick examples of people who did this. The first is the parable of the rich fool that Jesus tells. This is the man who stores up more and more wealth because he wants to be able to stop working. And it says this: "I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." And here it is because his hoarding is about the fact that he wants his money as his heaven now. That's all he's concerned about. He's lost his eternal perspective. The other person is King David. He had an army, which was a reasonable thing to have, and in a sense was a sensible precaution to take considering the nations around them. There was a likelihood of war. But his mistake is he then counts the number of his soldiers. And we might think, well, that's not that bad, is it? But it turns out that it's very serious, and God judges David for it. Why? Because it shows that David has put his confidence no longer in the Lord, but in his resources. And so he needs to learn that lesson. So in answer to that question, I would say, yes, it's okay to keep money to prepare for what we know we're going to need in the future. But hoarding is either where we start wanting our heaven now, or where we stop trusting in the Lord. And that's where we keep money for what might happen in the future, rather than trusting in the Lord. So I would say, do save money for things you know you need, that you will need. And but other than that, just trust in the Lord and use all the rest of your money for his work. And one way you could do that is centre forward.
Brilliant. Well, that's really helpful to hear. Thank you for kind of explaining how you might respond to that scenario, David. That's really helpful. And we may well be back with another question for you at some point in the future. Thank you for watching.